Good morning, freshmen parents and guardians. I thought I'd make a quick video to give you an overview of the second part of our social studies unit on government. So our first part was looking at a lot of the basics about our government, and our second part is going to focus on the beginnings of America. So we are looking at some of the British acts and reasons why the colonists wanted to break away, and also looking at the reality that when our country started, not all people in the colonies wanted freedom and independence from the British. Some wanted to stay with the British. So we do some activities to look at reasons why people wanted to stay and why they didn't. We talk about what it means to sign a Declaration of Independence and how, in the eyes of the British, you would be seen as committing treason to say that you want independence from them. And then we work to go into the actual declaration, look at different elements of it, and talk that over as well. So I'm going to go through this hopefully in about 2 minutes here, give you an idea of what we're doing and what you can see coming up for a summative assessment, one of the bigger assessments for this part of the unit. So I'll share my screen and here we go. Okay, so to begin, everything we're doing in Google Classroom, except for one little activity that we've already done. So we're in the Government 2 section. The only thing that will be graded from this in the end is going to be the King George letter. Everything else we do either individually and together. We look at it together to prep for that King George letter. So the first thing we did in class was we worked to fill in a graphic organizer, which is right here. So together we read this article. It talks about just some of the ideas from the Enlightenment that were used by early Americans. And then we looked at what did they feel should be the rights that all people have. So we looked at these, and then from that we filled in our organizer. And we looked at each one and gave an explanation of what did that mean. So for people's rights, we talked about the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of property, for example. So we went down and made this chart. We use this chart throughout a variety of different things. If you're helping your kids with the King George letter, they should be looking back to this chart. It should be filled in Google Classroom if they were in class when we worked on it. So that's the first thing we did. Now, moving from there, we went in to look at different groups. If your student was online, I had them work on the colonial view of British acts. If they're in class, we had a debate. So for each group in class, they had a card. One group was the Sons of Liberty. Another group was Western expansionists. And they had to look at the world from the perspective of that group. And then there's 5 groups total. They got together and they had a debate on whether we should sign the declaration or not. And in both 3A and 3B, they decided to sign it. So I gave them this card. They looked mainly at the points to make for how their group would feel. And then they looked at 4 of the British acts and looked at, do you feel these acts are justified? Should the British have used it? And going back to our chart, which of these rights did it possibly violate? So they become experts on the acts, and then each group presents to the whole class on how they feel about these, and then we voted, and they voted to declare independence. So from there, we move into the actual declaration itself. We use Edpuzzle to do a little quiz and run through of the beginning of the declaration, what that means. Today and tomorrow in class, we're looking at decoding the declaration. So for this, students will be working mainly individually, and they'll be looking through some of the grievances that the colonists had on the British. And they'll translate what it means. I'll give them information in terms of help with vocabulary, things like that. And they decide which of these 5 rights from the sheet that they made do they feel was violated. They'll highlight which one it was, in their opinion, maybe that one, and they'll talk about how they feel that right was broken. Now, we do this, I think it goes through 8 of them. Yep, we do this to prep for the King George letter, which is their assignment. So let's move into that. So the King George letter, after we finish talking about the declaration, will look like this. And if you look in Google Classroom, there is instructions. I have a little instruction video. I have instruction slides. But basically what the kids are doing is they're doing 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph, they're going to take my translation of the intro of the declaration, the preamble, which is right here. They'll have a copy as well. And basically summarize that in 1 paragraph. What are the colonists trying to say at the beginning of 1 paragraph? So you're writing the letter to King George, instead of writing all this, 1 paragraph on what is the main point there. The second paragraph is going to be them choosing 3 British acts or 3 of the grievances. So these could be the British acts we talked about when we had our big debate, or they could go back to our grievances sheet, the Decoding the Declarations, and talk about these things. So they're going to choose 3 of them, talk about how they harmed the colonists, and describe from the graphic organizer which right was violated. So maybe I say the Stamp Act. The Stamp Act hurt the colonists because they had a tax put on them. And I feel that goes against the second right, which is sovereignty, because the government in the states did not get a say on it. Only the British government did, something like that. So choose 3 acts, explain how they harmed citizens, explain which act or right they feel is broken, and then how it violated that right. So that'll be the second part. I give them a little example here at the Quartering Act. Then the third part is the simplest. It's literally explain that because of these problems, you're declaring independence and sign your name. So the King George letter is the only one that will be graded for this. It will be a summative assignment, so it'll be a higher point category than a normal assignment. And we will be starting to work on this in class today and continue on Thursday and Friday. I believe the King George letter will probably be due at the end of the day on Monday, but it'll largely depend on how things go in class. So if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know, and we will go from there. Have a great day, everybody.